This is an RCA RBC-1 receiver, and I've got it coupled to a power supply that I picked up at the local radio flea market. Just changed the capacitor in there, checked a few resistors, and it's working pretty good. The receiver needs about 200 volts HT and 6.3 volts heater supply, and this supply will go between about 180 volts and 500 volts and provides 6.3 volts for the heater supply. I was a little concerned it wouldn't supply enough current for the heaters, but it is. The heaters are on at the moment, and the voltage on the output terminals is 6.4 volts, so that's good. It's a little lower in the set because I'm feeding the supply through a thin umbilical cord temporarily. So there's a little bit of voltage loss across the cord, so there's about 6 volts on the tubes. And at the moment the HT is switched off. I'll switch the HT on. Receiver's drawing about 135 milliamps at 200 volts. Just measuring the voltage there. And there's actually a meter on the front panel that measures it as well. It's not reading quite right, but it's pretty close. Now, the weird thing is it's actually working. I checked a few of the paper and oil capacitors, and they're actually okay. I was missing a few tubes, so I replaced the tubes that were missing from the junk box for a moment. They're not all great tubes, but they're not too bad. And the receiver's working, sort of. Somebody has already been at this receiver and done some modifications to it. The stabilized supply to the heater of the local oscillator tube, which uses that amperite tube down there, which is a ballast tube, which I haven't got, and they rewired it so the 6.3 volt goes straight to the tube here. Normally there's a 17 volts AC supply that goes through the amperite tube. Then there's a pot underneath the chassis and a couple of resistors that set the heater voltage for this tube. And I guess that's really for when it's on a ship, and there could be variations in the supply voltage, and that might affect the frequency stability. So they stabilize the heater supply voltage. I can either leave it as it is, or I can put a regulated DC supply to that heater. The antenna is connected at the back here. There's a trimmer, and then there's first RF amp, second RF amp, local oscillator, and so on. And there's the IF and AF stages. But I say it's working sort of. Somebody has rewired this front panel power switch to switch the HT on and off, which I've just left it like that. I've done a little bit of rewiring in here temporarily just to get the thing running. A little bit of a kludge. But the weirdest thing is, I am feeding in 5 megahertz, and it's receiving the 5 megahertz signal on about 12.8 megahertz on the dial. And I can't get to the 5 megahertz signal on the band that receives 5 megahertz. And in fact, this is the only band that seems to be working, and it's way off frequency. So I'm not quite sure what's happening there. I need to investigate that. But it is quite sensitive. I can turn the input down to 1 microvolt, and it's still receiving the signal. Several of the controls are dirty and need a clean, but they are working. So anyway, first try on, and at least there's something happening. There's nothing burning up so far. It is built like a tank, this receiver. I'll switch it off, and it's getting late, so I'm going to leave it for tonight, and I'll investigate the local oscillator tomorrow and find out what's going on with the strange frequency response.